I know everybody has heard the news. Everybody across the media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, on the various college football forums, the big media in college football have been talking about the Notre Dame Clemson 12-year home and home series that was just announced by both universities. Both athletic directors released statements about it. Both universities released graphics, kind of debuting this partnership, if you will, between Notre Dame and Clemson for 12 consecutive home and home ball games to be played starting in 2027. So it'll start the 27 season, and it will go through 2038. So, Jordan, were you surprised when you heard the news of this, 12-year kind of partnership between Notre Dame and Clemson? Obviously, this kind of helps Clemson in a couple different ways, right? It's a huge brand to play every single year. That's important. It also helps Clemson with their strength of schedule. Notre Dame tends to be one of the better programs every single season in the country, and that's going to bolster Clemson's strength of schedule every single year by playing them, right? It also helps Clemson as we enter this new ACC agreement where there is unequal revenue sharing based off of TV ratings. Obviously, playing a brand like Notre Dame every single season is going to bolster Clemson's already high TV ratings when it comes to comparing with the programs of the ACC. So that's a couple ways that it helps Clemson out. Now, some of the things that have been brought up, playing Notre Dame 12 consecutive years in a row. What does that mean for the future of the agreement with Georgia to play 4 more contests with Georgia within that same time frame as well? We also have Oklahoma on the future schedule as well that will be within that time frame as well. So give us kind of your thoughts on you hearing the news, what it means for the Tigers, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff with the Georgia series and the Oklahoma series that'll be coming up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big for Clemson, for a number of reasons. This, you asked, was this a surprise? I mean, I had heard rumblings of this. I wasn't sure if it was actually going to come together, but the announcement was, okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think for both parties involved, and from a Clemson standpoint, like as you mentioned, you get a basically guaranteed schedule boost every year. It is a great. It's just a great matchup first and foremost. I mean, Clemson and Notre Dame have had some really tight and competitive contests over the years. They've met each other in college football playoffs, ACC championships, big regular season matchups. Everything in between. It's kind of sort of developed into a pseudo rivalry. Obviously they're not traditional rivals, and they haven't they don't have all this history with each other, but especially within the last decade, I think you've seen the competitive respect from each of the programs, and I think they've had a really close working relationship over the last decade or so. With Notre Dame being a partial member of the ACC and all of that as well, the relationships institutionally between both schools has grown tremendously, and they've kind of formed sort of a partnership. It's kind of like when it's kind of what happened when Florida State joined the ACC, and especially over the years as both programs rose to prominence, that rivalry developed. That wasn't a traditional rivalry, and it became one. I could totally see with this scheduling agreement, we could be talking about this 15 years from now, and we'd be like, yeah, we consider Notre Dame a rival. So I think that's really cool. Yeah, I think it's a big statement for where Clemson is, just with respect to college football in general. I mean, this is not something that would ever happen 15 years ago.
Right.
You would not see Notre Dame having a scheduling agreement with Clemson.
No.
So obviously the brand has grown tremendously since Dabo Swinney has been the head coach. And so all of that, you put all of that together, and I think the biggest thing financially for Clemson is it's a guaranteed big home game every other year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the ACC distribution model is you basically kind of cornered the market a little bit because as you remember, Notre Dame they're required to schedule 5 ACC teams every single year, as a part of their agreement to be partial members of the ACC, and in all the other sports they have to play 5 ACC teams in football to maintain their independence.
Right.
And so you've kind of cornered one of those spots because that game is going to count as one of those ACC 5 ACC games every single year. And so you're getting those extra games that, that would have gone to a Syracuse or a Georgia Tech. Obviously the other big programs in the conference, the Florida States, the Miamis. And so that in and of itself is a massive deal. So I think there's not too many negatives when you think about it from Clemson's perspective, and so I'm really excited for it. I enjoy when Clemson plays Notre Dame. I think they feel the same way, and it makes a lot of sense. I think for Clemson, and it does a lot for their strength of schedule and their just the ability to continue to put their brand on big national stages is important. So really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's one of those things where it's I think mutually beneficial for both programs, both universities. It makes a lot of sense, right? It's 2 of your major brands in college football, and it's a guaranteed huge game for both teams every single season, and a home game every other year, which you pointed out. But from Notre Dame's perspective, this is important to kind of nail down Clemson because they're always looking as being an independent school to bolster their strength of schedule as well. So instead of maybe playing a Wake Forest or a Syracuse or whoever in the ACC, they've locked in Clemson for the next 12 seasons starting in 2027, right? So that's a huge thing, and it's a great move for Clemson because of the unequal revenue share that you mentioned. Make no mistake about it, Clemson has to focus on ways to generate revenue, and entering this deal is going to bolster the amount of TV revenue that they receive from the ACC. So it makes a lot of sense in that fact. And then obviously from Notre Dame's perspective, USC is the athletic director and their athletic program have been, mentioning the schedule in the Big Ten and all that kind of stuff, and maybe possibly not playing Notre Dame every single season, which has become, kind of, the rivalry between USC and Notre Dame is well documented. But that may be, not happening in the future, right? You may have, we talk about, our Georgia matchup, our Oklahoma matchup. Well, let's think about this. What if the SEC goes to non-conference games? Is Georgia still going to want Clemson on the schedule? Probably not. Is Oklahoma still going to want Clemson on the schedule? Probably not. I mean, maybe. But again, you could see those teams move away from some of those big out-of-conference games because of adding an extra conference game that they have to play, right? And then they still have, teams like Georgia still have their out-of-conference rival in Georgia Tech that they're probably going to want to keep playing as well. Same thing with South Carolina and Clemson. So I think that's that's maybe another motivating factor for Clemson to kind of lock these in as well. But I'm happy. There's been some classic games over the years in recent memory with Notre Dame. I mean, you think about, we're 5-3 against Notre Dame right now. You can go all the way back to the Frank Howard days where those games were played, right? But talking more recently, 2015 and on, obviously you think back to that 2015 game where it was the remnants of the hurricane and a complete torrential downpour in Death Valley, and Notre Dame scores that touchdown. They're going for two to tie it up. And Ben Boulware makes that huge play. The BYOG speech from Dabo, just all sorts of imagery and, different things come to your mind when you think of that game. And that kind of catapulted Clemson into their first college football playoff appearance, and ultimately started changing the national narrative around our program, right? And really, catapulting us into, some of the elite programs of college football. And obviously we rattled off 6 straight seasons of absolute amazing football to kind of, continue on with that, and then obviously the 2018 team, they got smacked by that Trevor Lawrence team in the Cotton Bowl, 30-3 was that the score? 30-3. Justin Ross, shout out to him. He had an amazing game. I think he had well over 100 yards receiving, if I remember correctly. And obviously Trevor Lawrence did his thing as well, not to mention that defensive line that was there that season. And ultimately Clemson goes on and wins the national championship that season. And then obviously the COVID year where Notre Dame became officially a part of the ACC and got to play as a conference member and play for the ACC championship. Their one and only time in a conference. They played for a conference championship. Luckily, Clemson averted disaster, I guess you could say, for the ACC by winning that game. Obviously, we lost the regular season matchup, but we got our revenge in the ACC championship game, ultimately going on to the playoffs and getting beat by LSU that year. But, I mean, that's just a few examples of just like the Notre Dame games that, stand out. And it's been a really great series so far. We've played 6 times since 2015, and I'm looking forward to the next 12 because they're always amazing games. They're always physical, and they always make for great TV. Way too much stress, but in the hindsight of them, they're a lot of fun to think about, and it's going to be, I think, great for both parties.
Yeah, 100%. And both of these programs vying for major, college football, relevance, national championship, all of that. I think it makes a lot of sense for both programs, and it's a good way for both of them to make money. I mean, that's what it is. I saw Els King say it's a big money grab, and you're right. I mean,
yeah.
No, there's no doubting that. But that's the game now. With TV networks dominating the landscape of the sport.
Yeah,
you got to do what you got to do if you want to win national championships. If you want to be that level of program, you got to play the game. And this is
playing the game. You got to generate any and all extra revenue that you possibly can. And a partnership with a brand like Notre Dame, love them or hate them, it's going to give you a leg up when it comes to that ACC TV revenue and the unequal distribution that's going to happen going forward. So I can't blame Clemson at all. Mark chimes in and says Clemson spared the ACC a ton of embarrassment by winning that game. We absolutely did. And I think the ACC should be a little bit more grateful to Clemson for saving their honor. What little bit of honor that the ACC may have left, which is at this point none. But at that point, we were saving the little bit of honor that the ACC had left. You imagine if Notre Dame would have had the rest of history to brag about winning a conference for the one season that they were in a conference.
Dude.
It would have been. I mean, no one would have ever been able to tell a Notre Dame fan anything from that point forward.
Yep.
Like,
join a conference. We did.
We
already
did, and we won, and we're done with that now. So we have one conference championship.
And Clemson has done that twice now. A first-time member making the ACC championship, Clemson being the only team stopping them from creating embarrassment. With SMU, obviously this past season, like
SMU, yep, a group of 5 teams that came in
conference
and
needs to be more
regular conference championship, and would have won it if not for the leg of one Nolan Huger, who had an amazing, game-winning field goal to walk it off in the ACC championship game. So, yeah, like I said, the ACC should show a little bit more gratitude to our Tigers.
100%. I saw John ask. He said, I thought 7 of the 12 games won't count as conference games. So every single one of them counts. I'm assuming you're talking about Notre Dame. For every single one of them counts. It's just that some of them are already on the books because naturally the rotation was going to be come to Clemson in some of those years. I think it's 6 that
5.
I think there's 6 that were already on the books, or
it was 5 of them. 5 were previously scheduled. They added 7 more to make it 12 and to make it 12 consecutive seasons. So
that's 7 years where another ACC team would have otherwise had Notre Dame on the schedule that won't. Yeah. So
all 12 are going to count for Notre Dame as one of those 5 ACC games that they have to play. But the 7 number was the ones that they added that weren't already scheduled. 5 of which were already on the books. So that's where that 5 and 7 came from. But yeah, I'm excited for it, man. I know a lot of people hate Notre Dame. I know a lot of people, it's kind of like Notre Dame's very polarizing, right? Like you either love them or you hate them. There's not very many people that are neutral on them. I'm kind of neutral on Notre Dame.
Same.
I don't hate them. I don't love them. It does irritate me that what the ACC allows Notre Dame to do, but I can't really be mad at Notre Dame for it because it's the ACC commissioner and the ACC office that are allowing these things to happen. So if my team was Notre Dame, or, if the roles were reversed and Clemson was the independent, right, I would expect them to take full advantage of whatever conference would allow them to do that as well. So it's not really Notre Dame's fault. It's the ACC's fault, which is why they're a dying conference. And their future is their days are numbered. I believe that. So at least when it comes to them being a power football conference, who knows what the landscape looks like later on. Maybe college football makes a break from all other sports. You've heard people talk about that kind of stuff, but hey, we won't get into all that here.